So I actually just saw a comment on my most recent video asking for an update to my list for the Outsiders meta. This was the list that I showed, I think the one I made top 8 with. There might be 1 or 2 cards that are different here just from testing since then, but it's the exact same shell. There was a caveat that I had where I said that if you're expecting an aggro meta instead of the payload, because the payload is hedged for basically Dromai, you would just cut it. You would cut blue magnetic shockwave, and all you would do is you would add Tekla Core, you would max it out on copies, you would max out Pounder on copies, you would add BIOS update. Before anyone says that like BIOS update doesn't work with maximum velocity, keep in mind we're cutting a non-boost card, we're cutting payload for BIOS update. So your boost ratio is exactly the same. Your high octane and your max velocities hit the same in this deck regardless, it doesn't matter. However, this video is kind of pointless because with Baltimore, we also need to be blocking a lot more into Azuri, because if you're on the pistol plan, Azuri can run some banish effects, but also can just pressure you pretty well. And so you want to kind of be playing a more block 3 focused game where you're going to be prioritizing blocking cards a lot more. If you try to race her, she has so many defensive tools, even just in the 3 block nature of the class. She can probably fatigue you on boost, and that's if you're reading that it's redline. If you're reading that it's contract, you're in for a much grindier game, and you regardless should be on pistol as a default. If they're on redline, you can block out pretty well, build out pistols, and then outvalue them in the end game because they just don't have enough damage. If they're on contract, you need to be on pistol anyway. And I'm trying to think about what else is. Oh, Dromai's back. So yeah, it doesn't matter. That was the caveat. Unfortunately, this is not the time, because if you're going to be playing this deck, you're going to want more blocking cards in your deck, and you're going to want 3 more poppers. The previous list is exactly what I'm playing. So maybe one day we'll get new cards from LSS. Until then, the outside too is Magnetic actually has a lot of game into the Ranger equipment. I wouldn't expect to win on average against either Ranger. They're just a little too pushed. Not too pushed. No, they are too pushed. Anyway, doesn't matter. But they're very strong with Outsiders. All the rates are better than yours. They have more disruptive effects than you. You have literally 1 on hit in the deck, and I don't know if there's a card besides Falcon Wing in Lexi that doesn't have an on hit. And in Azalea, I literally don't think that's even possible to have a non-hit arrow in that deck. So your card quality is just, it's not on par. It is what it is. It is possible to race the Rangers. Azalea is so much harder because of Red in the Ledger, and also Codex getting Red in the Ledger back 3 more times doesn't make it easy for you, as you had some ways to beat decks that wanted to remove Go again, but you can't beat that. So tough luck. Oldhim is just as good as ever. We're up to 3 Purifier. This is unfortunate, and it's a nature of Remembrance being somewhat parasitic, where if fatigue decks are going to be using Remembrance to beat decks, the answer is then for those decks to also include Remembrance. Doesn't feel good, but I think it's most likely correct to cut one of these cards for Remembrance, because if you do go against Warhorn Oldhim, the last thing you want is to like not have any sort of game plan to beat the Warhorn. Pretty much only go control into Oldhim. The things like Lexi and Azalea, you just don't have the defensive tech to deal with, unfortunately. So unfortunately, the answer is probably gonna be cutting Unmovable. That might be incorrect. You probably could cut a 0 for 4. I'm changing my mind in real time. This is a very niche decision, so whatever D-react you decide to cut probably doesn't matter too much. It would be nice to just be able to cut the 3rd Purifier, go down to 2, which feels like a normal amount, and then just run Remembrance. But unfortunately, because of Fatigue Oldhim, and also mid-range Oldhim being able to get around 2 and 2 now, there are ways for them to sort of math it out where they don't actually lose any life. At Purifier 4, which previously wasn't the case, but the higher earth counts now in the new decks allow them to basically sequence out a turn where with 3 cards they can take no damage if you shoot 3 times for 4, and then they can send 4 back at you with Titan's Fist, which means that you will pretty much deterministically lose the game. You can even make a case for including Crown. Sorry, not Crown. The card that hypothetically does beat Crown. You could find room for Vambrance. Maybe the problem is this is a hybrid problem. As soon as we start teching too much in the sideboard, we have no slots to cut in the main board unless we're going to start throwing in like a 1 of Induction Chamber in the list, which is just incorrect. Vambrace is not bad. It's not great. And ironically, the only deck that seems to be doing successful with Vambrace, besides like some Azuris that are making it up there, ironically is Oldhim in the mirror. There's a small analogy from the Oko meta back in Magic, if any of you remember that, where there were some black spells that destroyed planeswalkers, and there was also Mystical Dispute. Even if your opponent went turn 1 Gilded Goose, turn 2 Oko, even if you were going second, you could still play a blue source and counter a Mystical Dispute. And so people thought, oh, this is great, we have an answer to Oko. Ironically, what ended up happening was that the Oko decks ran 3 colors to include the black mana spell to kill their opponent's Okos and to counter their opponent's Oko so that theirs were the only one on the table. So that's a little bit of history. I'm starting to see that a little bit of Vambrace. I do understand Katsu and Azuri can use it. I think Dash can as well, but unfortunately, don't have room. But Vambrace is not bad because it does actually mean that you can trade with Oldhim early game. Because if you flip Purifier, it means they can't rely on Crown and Rampart to just negate all damage until you find your first Purifier. That could be an option. So if you would like to experiment with cutting certain things for Vambrace, you could try it out. You could even try cutting the Purifier for Vambrace if you want. So overall, that's it. Basically, not much has changed. You're just putting in Remembrance deck. It looks exactly the same. Probably will be for a while until we get some more mech cards. So we'll see what happens in the future. Good luck to everyone who is playing in the Outsiders meta. May your combustibles always hit for 8 against Lexi, and enjoy yourselves. So until next time, thank you for watching.